Assalamu alaikum students, how are you all? Hope that you are having an amazing day. Today the topic of our discussion is historical and contemporary theories of semantics. This is the lecture number 2 from the continuous series, as we have already discussed some theories from these topics. Now there is no need to identify and justify the definition of theory because we have discussed it in previous lecture, but still we will repeat this definition that a theory is a group of linked ideas. A theory basically discusses the linkage of ideas intended to explain something. It totally based on the observations, and the observations leads us towards a framework of explaining something, that the observations are base of anything which describes us the facts and figures. So the explanations are based on the assumptions. After the careful observations, we make assumptions or hypotheses in our mind. The basic assumptions leads us towards the hypothesis. From the assumptions follows a number of possible hypotheses, and they can be tested or provide support for or to challenge the theory. So a hypothesis may or may not be correct, because the hypothesis is basically a challengeable statement, a statement which may answer us the different type of question. It either be in a correct way, or it may be wrong also. So let's move towards the historical and contemporary theories of the semantics. There are 6 theories in today's lecture we are going to discuss. The first one is the field theory, which will describe as the possible number of fields for a certain type of phrases or the expressions. The second one is the use theory, as the nomination of this theory requires some kind of usage of words, and we use the different type of words to describe all the daily matters and daily routines. The third one is the speech act theory. Speech act theory describes us the different speeches that we use in our daily life, and we will also discuss in it that the different actions which are taken in the speeches and their linkage with the expressions. The fourth one is the descriptive theory, which describes us the in detail and in-depth meanings of the words from listener towards the speaker, or from speaker towards the listener. Componential theory is one of the basic and the major theory of the semantic, and the hermeneutics theory, which will deal with the different type of the religious assumptions also, and apart from the religion, it will discuss the deep meaning of the words, or about the spirituality also. Having a start from the field theory, the very first theory of today's lecture, that basic to this theory is the concept that each word in a language is surrounded by a network of associations that connects it with the other terms. So every word has some correlated words. Every expression has a correlated or some correlated expressions. Every sentence is surrounded by the correlated sentences. That is called the field of that word, field of that expression, field of that phrasal verb or sentence. The field theory visualizes the vocabulary as a mosaic on the genetic scale, which is built up of fields and higher unison that same ways as the fields are built up by the words. That every field is basically constructed through the words, or we can say that the words are the building blocks of a field. A field couldn't be found out, a field couldn't be elaborated, a field couldn't be constructed without the words. So words are the key elements which are used to build a field. The associative field of a word is formed by an intricate network of association. Here different words have the different types of associations with the other words, which makes the phrases or sentences. And same is the case at the larger level, also at the sentence structure level. some based on the similarity. Some words are similar to each other, but we can have the opposite meaning also in our mind. So others based on the continuity, there is opposition also something. So some arising between the senses, like our five senses, other between the names, the common nouns, the proper nouns, or the name of a person, place, or thing, the specific one or the common one, and other again between the both. So a field always generated through the surrounding words, and in between is there always a main word. The field theory elaborates to us that many of these associations are embodied in figurative language. The figurative language means the exaggerated language, the hi-fi language, the language of law courts, the language of the newspapers in a certain way that it describes the particular vocabulary and particular hi-fi and exaggerated type of vocabulary, like metaphors, similes, proverbs, idioms, and the links, etc. They might be different to each other, but all of these are denoting some kind of special type of vocabulary which is sometime understandable and sometime it is not understandable. As one of the Sachore's pupil expressed it, Ferdinand de Sachore's pupil has expressed it, that the associative field is a hollow. It is totally a hollow field which surrounds the sign and whose exterior fringes becomes merged. Its exterior is merged in the interior of the field. Always, because it is a generated field from the one word and different words are generated from the one word, so it becomes merged outside, but it is always widespread inside. So let's see how the field is formed. The field is formed by an intricate network of associations. We associate a word with different words. Like I'm giving you an example of one word, fish. So after taking in your mind that word fish, you will come to know the word water, you will come to know the word river, you will come to know the word canal, you will come to know the word ocean, you will come to know the word sea, you will come to know the word rocks, you will come to know the word boats, you will come to know the word ships, and you will come to know the different type of many words in your mind. Similarly, having just one word fish in your mind, they comprises on the similarity, the continuous suggestions, continuous way, the continuous elaboration of the words, and the sensations, and of course the name, etc., as we have discussed earlier. The second theory is the use theory. In recent works, Paul Horwich has revived the use theory of meaning. So what it elaborates to us that the meaning of a word is constituted by the basic undrived acceptance of the certain sentences containing it. There are always the basic undrived acceptance, the acceptance which are not derived from the other thing. Derived things are which has been ejected out from the other things or the other words. So the use theory holds that a word's meaning is constituted by its basic undrived acceptance property. Every word has an acceptance property which may be derived or undrived. If we derive some words from it, they will be recognized as the related words. But if there are some words which are undrived from those words and we use those words, that is the postulate of use theory. Meaning and applications of use theory. According to Horwich, the use theory of meaning, let's have an example. The meaning of a word W is endangered by the undrived acceptance of the certain sentences containing W. that a single word has its own specific meaning, but if for the broader meaning you can use that word in different ways, in similar ways, in different ways, in a number of ways. Horich applies this theory to provide an account of semantic stipulations. So the semantic stipulations leads us to provide different type of words, a number of words from an underived acceptance of a single word. A single word is having an inside vocabulary in that word. So the meaning here describes to us that a word has a number of meanings. The number of meanings mean that the number of meaning have a number of words in it, and semantic stipulations proceeds by deciding to accept sentences containing an as yet meaningless word w. So they might be meaningful, they might be meaningless. The some sounds are meaningful, some sounds are meaningless. Some words are meaningful, some words are meaningless. Some words relate to a topic and some words doesn't relate to a topic. So it is up to us that how we take the words according to our own usage. That is the basic conception of the use theory. Thereby, one brings to about that W gets an underived acceptance property. Since a word's meaning is constituted by its basic underived acceptance property, this decision endows the word with a meaning. So a word with a meaning have more value, a word without meaning has less value, but in semantics we can say that both of the words, the word one having the meaning and the word one having the not any specific meaning, are both of them are important for us. We can use them according to our usage or according to our requirements and according to our own particular type of things. Use theory further describes us the account of semantic stipulation contrasts with it, not only based on the similarities, but sometimes it is also in a contrastive parameter. The standard view that the semantic stipulation proceeds by assigning the meanings or the references to W. So if the W has not the definite type of meaning, it means that there should be a reference in it which will leads us towards the meaningful contexts. It makes a certain set of sentences, the set of sentences which may be meaningful or which may not be meaningful, because we are going to analyze the theory of meanings, the use theory of meanings. It means that we will consider those words which will give us the proper meanings of a word. It expresses the true propositions. It gives us the true propositions of that word, the true usage of that word, how that word can be used in our simple and in our comprehensive language. The third is speech act theory. Speech act theory basically describes us the theoretical account of the speech act theory is basically describes as the philosophy of language and linguistics. That is something which to be expressed by different type of people, an individual one or in the party matter also by the social norms and conditions. So the speech act theory in philosophy of language and linguistics is something expressed by an individual that not only presents the information but it also performs an action as well. So it describes to us that the speech act theory is basically divided in two parts. The first one is the theoretical and the second one is the practical. The first one is the theory, the words, and the second one is the action, which is a practical type of work. For example, the phrase "I would like the apple" Could you please pass it to me? Here, apple refers us to some object. The object which we can see with our own very eyes, and we can elaborate these things that it is considered a speech act as it expresses the speaker's desire to acquire the apple as well as presenting. So, to acquire the apple, to get the apple is a practical mode, and similarly, to present an apple to somebody is also a practical work. So, here comes the third postulate that it performs an action as well in speech act theory. A request that someone pass the apple to them, that is also a practical form of our theory, that speech act theory requires some actions as well in it. Here in speech act theory, the hails from the Wittgenstein's philosophical theories. Wittgenstein believes that meaning derives from the pragmatic traditions. The traditional pragmatic concepts describes and derives the meanings from the word. So speech act theory is based on the pragmatic traditions, we can say that. Demonstrating the importance of how language is used. There are two types of descriptive methods in speech. The first one is what is to be said, and the second one is how we are going to set that thing, how we are going to say that thing. So here the practical demonstrating is the important one, that importance of how language is used, in what way the language is going to be used to accomplish the objectives within the specific situations. So different objectives relating to the different kind of purposes always denotes some kind of meanings within the specific situations, that a certain situation demands a certain type of action from us. There is always a specific action for a specific mode of situation. Speech act theory further describes and analyzes the following levels. The first level is a locutionary act, as the performance of an utterance, that how well that utterance was, how bad that utterance was, the actual utterance and its apparent meanings, that what has been told and what were the hidden meaning behind that thing, that what is going to be told any person, comprising any and all of its verbal. We will analyze all the verbal values, how the vocals were used, how the tongue was used, how the sound was produced for delivery of that utterance. The social and rhetorical meanings are also important, that what sentence has been used for this purpose, has been uttered for this purpose, is socially correct, or it has the rhetorical meanings according to the purpose. If yes, then we are on our speech act theory, all of which correspond to the verbal, syntactic and semantic aspect of any meaningful utterance. An illocutionary act, the active result of the implied request or meaning presented by the locutionary act. Here, the illocutionary act is in reverse or vice versa to the locutionary act. For example, if the locutionary act in an interaction is the question, is there any salt? The implied illocutionary request is, can someone pass the salt to me? That locutionary act is always direct and illocutionary act is always indirect. Can someone pass the salt to me is a request, and is there any salt is a question. Locutionary act is a question and illocutionary act is a request to somebody. Both are the question, there is no doubt. but the way of utterance is changed in both of the modes. The mode of utterance is changed in both of the sentences. Speech act theory further describes us to that a perlocutionary act. That is the third point. The actual effect of the locutionary and illocutionary acts, such as the persuasions, convincing, scaring, enlightening, inspiring, or otherwise getting some to do or realize something, whether intended or not. These something persuasions are there, convincing parameters are there, scarings are there, enlightenings are there, and inspirations are there in the perlocutionary act. And the fourth one is the term metalocutionary act has also been used to indicate a speech act that refers to the forms and functions of the discourse itself, rather than continuing the substantive development of the discourse or the configurational functions of prosody and punctuations or the pronunciations, etc. The fourth theory here we are going to discuss is the descriptive theory. Is basically assigns the semantic values to the expression of the language. That what is the fundamental mode of the language, what is the fundamental use of the language, and what are its semantic values. So we explain in descriptive theory the major descriptions of the things, that it describes and elaborates and explains each and everything to us. How the semantic values of the complex expressions are a function of the semantic values of their parts. That every complex expression has its own function according to semantic values. That either it has a positive function, either it has a negative function. Any descriptive value of the semantics describes as its own major function. The descriptive semantic theories support this supports to characterize the meaning of the expressions of languages in whatever complexity they have. There might be complex languages, there might be semi-complex languages, there might be simple languages also. So it characterizes the meaning of the expression according to the language, that what the language is going to describe about the particular expression and what are the meaning of a particular expression, they are all characterized in the descriptive theory. So our descriptive semantic theory is a theory that says that what the semantics for the language is, without saying that what we are going to say, but what we are not going to say. It is a comparative analysis between those things. What it is about the practice of using that language. Either we are practicing that language and what is the purpose behind it. And also it explains why the given meaning is the right one. That it is up to us that we choose one meaning according to our dire need, that either it is correct or not. If it is correct, then accept that one. That is the description method. But if it is not correct according to our requirements, then we can left that meanings there. We now judge that the descriptive semantic theory basically a relation between what we are going to say and what we are not going to say, what we are going to take and what we are going to discard, what we have and what we have not. The fifth theory is the componential theory. The word is basically derived from the component. Component means a part, a partial part of anything. That it basically describes as the theory of concepts, the theory of different concept of a particular thing, a particular component. Because in sentences and in essays, in meanings, in expressions, every part has its own particular concept. and every part or every partial component should be dealt with separate. Every partial component has its own values according to which we analyze those componential parts. The concept formation and semantics according to which the meaning of a concept or word can be understood. So according to that thing, that every narrative can build its own meaning. One narrative which is positive for me according to my mode of meaning, according to my componential theory, it might be not true for you people. That there is a news in a newspaper, I accept that news as positive one, but you deny that news. You doesn't going to believe on that news. You don't believe on that news. So it means that there the narratives of the things are changed for us. That the meaning of a concept or a word can be understood. It might be agree with my understandings, and it might not be agree with my understanding. Also, by analyzing it into its set of defining properties, so we take a proper set of different type of the components, then we analyze it part by part, what part is going to express us the true meanings, and if there might be a possibility that the other part is not going to explain the meanings at all. So the standard example is the concept of even number, which is completely specified by defining property evenly divisible by 2. We have studied in mathematics that even numbers are those numbers which are divided by 2, divisible by 2. Having this concept in our mind, we can generate any number which is even, like 100, which is divisible by 2. So it gives us the major concept by having the particular components in its context, and gives us the proper meaning of that thing, that text. The next one is componential theory. Some more elaboration. The theory amounts to an assumption that all concepts can be reduced to their defining properties or essences in this way. It is form of essentialism. Beg pardon. So the essence in this way, it is form of essentialism. It can be traced to the writings of the Greek philosophers Plato in Laws. That was the major writing of Greek philosopher Plato, Laws, and Aristotle's metaphysics. Metaphysics, something which is far beyond from the physics. And what is the definition of the physics? That it is basically it deals with the physical things. It is a study of matter and energy and their interrelation between them. But the metaphysics is something far beyond from the physical world. It doesn't exist in the physical worlds. It is still hugely influential and is often encountered in the form of the belief that every concept has a defining attribute. Every concept has its own definition. Every concept has its own requirements or essence that determines its identity. Every component is characterized by its own identity. So these identical relations correlate with each other. We gather these relations and then we eject out the meaning from them. That is the basic postulate of componential theory. It ought always to be defined. It should be defined from one person to eject out the meanings, and one's term in any arguments or discussion. If we are going to analyze those things in our argumentative way or in the form of discussion, then we have to elaborate the different type of the components by having the componential theory in our mind. So the views of Karl R. Roppers are here. So basically the componential theory, the theory of components, was severely attacked by Roper the Austrian-born British philosopher Karl R. Popper from 1902 to 1994. In his book The Open Society, Its Enemies, 1945, it was written in 1945, and has serious weaknesses in psychology. He says that basically, if you can analyze the psychological way, the componential theory isn't going to be true. The reason behind it is that every person has its own psyche about the words and the meaning. So, if the components are elaborated by the number of people according to their own psyche, they might be changed from person to person. And there is no doubt that the meaning always change from person to person in semantics, also called a definitional theory or the feature list theory. Basically, it gives us the definitional theory or the feature list theory only because that all the features of an expression or the words are in front of our eyes. The last one is the hermeneutics theory. Hermeneutics theory is basically the theory and the methodology of interpretation, especially the interpretation of biblical text, the God-gifted text which we have generated from direct from the God, the wisdom literature, the literature which touches the mind, the intellect of a person, the wisdom of a person, and the philosophical text. That there are the number of philosophies in hermeneutics theory. Hermeneutics is more than the interpretative principles, methods we resort to when immediate comprehension fails. So it can be dealt with the supernatural things. It can be dealt with the metaphysical things or the spirituality. I will say that the spiritual methodology, the spiritual biblical text, the spiritual wisdom of literature, and the spiritual philosophical thoughts are the basic key points of the hermeneutic theory. Hermeneutics is the art of understanding or making oneself understood. That it is inside the understanding of person that either he has understood all the things or not. So those comparative things behind the understanding, either it is understandable or not, is always a major mode of our knowledge. Modern hermeneutics includes both the verbal and non-verbal communication as well as the semiotics. The verbal communication is that which we have uttered from our tongue or from our mouth. But the non-verbal communication is that which we are thinking in our mind and we are going to convey through the form of different type of the signals by using our organs or by using our body language or by using our different type of intuitions or the you can see revelation or anything which belongs to the spirituality. Presuppositions and pre-understanding. Sometimes we suppose something about any topic in an advanced manner that it will be happen and it happens. So we understand that thing and we describe at the end that I have said, I have told that it will be happen. So it is going to happen. That is called the presupposition and pre-understanding of something, that I do know that what he is going to say. That is some kind of that expression about the pre-understanding. Hermeneutics has been broadly applied in the humanities, especially in law, history, and theology. So all these things are related with the hermeneutic semantics, hermeneutic theory, and the hermeneutics gives us the far long ideas of the metaphysical things and of the spirituality of the biblical text from the, you can say that text from the Quran as well, Quran Jid as well. So it has been broadly applied in the humanities, law, theology, and history. All the four subjects are directly related with the hermeneutics. Hermeneutics theory. The hermeneutics was initially applied to the interpretation. It has been later broadened to the question of general interpretation, but it is the question of generalization, that how we generalize the different words, different expressions, how we interpret the expressions, how we broadened our sense of understanding the expressions in terms of hermeneutics. And basically, there are sometimes incorrectly used interchangeably things, that it is a wider discipline which includes the written things, the verbal things, the non-verbal things, and the communication, having the concept of communication, the non-verbal communication in any case of the communication. So basically, exegesis focuses on the primarily upon the word and grammar of the text. That what is that word and what was the grammar that has been used for that particular type of text, and in which context it was used. That is also important. There are approximately two categories of hermeneutics. The first one is the religious hermeneutics, and the second one is the philosophical hermeneutics. It is very important that it is at a time going to dealt with the religious beliefs, and it is at a time going to be dealt with the philosophical terms and conditions, or the philosophical themes, the philosophical subjects. The religious major subjects which include in this category is that Islamic hermeneutics, which deals with the theology of Islam, the religious practices, our good book, our action according to Islam, our spirituality values of Islam, the code of conduct of Islam, the Islamic values and tradition, the history of Islam, the Islamic galvanization, the Islamic thoughts, a different type of Islamic terminologies like Islamic economics, the Islamic banking, etc. Biblical hermeneutics says that it deals with the Bible, which belongs to the Christianity religion. The Buddhist hermeneutics, religion wise, it is different from Islam. The Christianity is also different, but there are some type of similarities also in them. In these religious beliefs, though we don't believe on those similarities to some extent, but there is a gap between, there is a distinction between the different religion. There is, because the Islam is a universal religion. Islam is a universal code of conduct of life. Islam is a universal theological religion. So that's why Islam covers all the aspects of life. The next one is Vedic hermeneutics and Talmudic hermeneutics, etc. The division is according to different type of the religions. The second is the philosophical hermeneutics, which deals with the ancient hermeneutics. Ancient means the historical, or the one thing which is very old, ancient traditions, like the Greek playwrights has written about the ancient thoughts and ancient dramas, plays, etc. The medieval hermeneutics, the ages in between the ancient and the modern age, and the last one is the modern hermeneutics. So this philosophical division is according to the different ages, like ancient age, then medieval age, and then the modern age or the pre-modern age. Here we have references from where I have collected all this material. So that's it from today's lecture. Hope that you have understand all the concepts as well as all the 6 theories given above in this lecture. If you have any question regarding this lecture, you can ask me in comments box. And with today's lecture, we have completed the 2 spells of our theories, the historical and semantic theories. In next lecture, we will discuss some more theories about related to this topic, and hopefully that you have got all the concepts. Stay home, stay safe. Thanks a lot.